Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time, as we continue our survey of Stallone's 90s back catalogue. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and on today's episode, we are looking at Stallone's other 1995 film, Assassins. As usual, alongside me to talk about the movie, we have Bloodhound Picks co-host, screenwriter, and a man who might not be the number one assassin in the world, but is definitely in the top 5 and climbing. It's Mr. Craig Jaheim.
You know, I've been trying to think of a good intro for this one, but there's nothing in the movie, no lines I can remember, so I'll just say hi.
Just say hi. That's fair enough. Yeah, there was less meat there to kind of give you a kind of cool intro, but that was, because we'll discuss further in the episode about the kind of ranking system of the wide assassin ranking system that the film apparently goes by. But before that, as always, for the listeners, I'm going to give you some background details on the movie. So, Assassins was released on October 6th, 1995. It was directed by Richard Donner, a little-known director who you may know for such things as Superman, The Omen, The Goonies, Lethal Weapon, Scrooge, like a whole host of stuff. Screenplay-wise, the initial script was done by the Wachowski sisters of Matrix fame, but the script got a page 1 rewrite at the request of Donner by Brian Hegeland, who you may know from LA Confidential and a bunch of other things. It's a rewrite that did not go down well with the Wachowskis, who were so unhappy with the rewritten script that they petitioned the WGA to have their names taken off the film, but that was refused by the WGA. Something we will definitely discuss further as we delve into this one. Review-wise, the movie is currently sitting at a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which is actually pretty solid. 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 50 reviews, not so solid. It does not have a Metacritic score, and it has a 2.8 on Letterboxd. Finally, at the box office, the movie made $83.3 million off a $50 million budget, which, while not an out-and-out flop, was probably pretty underwhelming for what Warner Brothers probably wanted from this movie. So, Assassins. Have you seen Assassins before?
I have, and I think we've talked before a lot after, not recording, and so I've watched it before all the way through. I'd say maybe 2 times or so. And then it's always been this movie, I'd say over the last 10 years, where it'll just pop up randomly on TV. So I haven't seen the opening in a long time, but I'll always catch either like the middle 30 or the last 30 or stuff like that. And that's so kind of over the years, I've seen it in chunks, like several times. But this is the first time I've actually sat down and watched it from beginning to end since maybe a little after it came out.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same. So as a teenager, I definitely saw this movie, like from beginning to end once before sitting down for this rewatch. And then, but a couple of times I have seen like the tail end of this. It always seems to be the end of the movie. I rewatching it, I remembered like the scenes in the kind of dilapidated hotel, way more, and I was like, oh yeah, I've definitely caught the end of this like a few times on telly, but I think I've only seen it once all the way through before sitting down for this rewatch for this episode.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, that's kind of the most memorable part too. It does kind of, even though there's a lot of action throughout, there's like key action moments throughout, it does feel like the movie's trying to build you up into this final confrontation, which we'll get into if it's effective or not. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is unusual for us. I think we're maybe just going to seg you into the plot of it. Actually, no, I will say one thing before we seg you into the plot. We usually go on a bunch of tangents and then we seg you into the plot, so we may as well have one tangent. I just want to say, if there's one thing we're learning from these movies, is that Stallone, even if he's not necessarily successful, is often very on brand for the time. So the Specialist, came out in 1994, the year of the bomb, amongst the other bomb movies. And also it was an erotic thriller, which was of its time as well. They were still doing good business. Judge Dredd, comic books were still, there's a lot of comic book movies in the air, that's kind of on brand, on time. Even the Demolition Man, because it came out in the same year as Last Action Hero, Meta Action, that was the year for meta actions, that was good. And this movie as well, very on brand for the time, because nearly everything in the mid-90s is a crime movie. And also, 1995, Year of the Hacker. Because this is the same, because one of the central characters in the movie, Elektra, played by Julianne Moore, is a hacker. And this is the same year, the year 1995, that the movie Hackers and the Sandra Bullock thriller The Net came out. So, very on brand.
Yeah. And this also kind of, as we'll probably get into it once we get towards the end, it also feels like, even though Antonio Banderas at the time wasn't as big of a name, it feels very much in that, as we were talking about prior, that Heat vein, where it's like two forces that have kind of been playing this cat and mouse. Then, having their official meet are trying to figure out who's the best or who can take down who or whatever it may be.
Banderas wasn't that big at the time. He was kind of slowly rising in that, because he had been 93, he was in Philadelphia, then 94 he was in an Interview with a Vampire, and Desperado just had come out just a few months before this movie. So he was definitely getting there, he was definitely becoming a thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, and he does great. I know, he's on, that's another element I know we'll get into, is that he's definitely playing a certain movie that seems like it fits in some sections. But his character he's consistent. I'll give him that much. Julianne Moore or even Stallone, they kind of flipped back and forth between what type of movie they're doing. Same with the whole movie in itself. But Antonio Banderas is very much this is his character, and this is the movie that he's in.
Which is kind of weird because, in some ways, he's the most insane character. In other ways, he's the character who makes the most sense. Because, like you say, at least there's a through line to that character. The dark character always feels like the same character. You feel like you know that character. He doesn't have a kind of sudden moment where you feel like, what? That character wouldn't do that. Whereas, other characters, that is not true.
I will say, because I know I'll forget later on, I love the fact that, so he's supposed to be, obviously the villain, he's supposed to be the sociopath who's just very competitive and wants to take that number one spot and kill anybody, and yet he's a really good tipper. There's several moments throughout where he's buying stuff for people and they thank him because he gives them way more money than, that he's, than it's worth or stuff like that. Especially when they're in Puerto Rico.
That's very true. But he always he's very magnanimous about it as well. He always kind of waves it off no, it's no thing, it's all good, just the way I roll. Yeah. So he's a very considerate sociopath. Yeah.
And this was also an interesting one because I don't know if you noticed it, but especially with Demolition Man or whatever, a lot of these movies you can kind of see the right-leaning element of being either you have to solve it with a gun or violence or whatever it may be. But this has several points where there's the bus that has the sign that is the crossed out NRA. She sprays the woman's coat, the fur coat. And then there's also a woman wearing, the waitress or somebody walking by is wearing pro-choice.
I thought she was a waitress, like in that later scene towards in the finale. Yeah. I thought she was a waitress, but then she just goes back to a table with another guy, and so it seems like she was just getting some sugar or whatever from Julianne Moore's table and taking it back to her own table. But yeah, she just wanders over with her. I noticed that as well because there's a couple of scenes with buses, and both buses have like an anti. NRA thing, like the NRA kind of crossed out, and like you say, there's a scene where the Julianne Moore's character Elektra spray paints a fur coat with a kind of one of those, kind of stop signs, that's obviously some of Richard Donner's politics kind of bleeding through there. It's not the kind of liberalism you necessarily expect from your 90s action movie.
Yeah, especially a Stallone action movie. But
yeah, for sure. But I feel like, given the way he kind of disregarded the script, and apparently the Wachowski sisters really did not get on with Richard Donner. Obviously it's very much his film and above all else. So he seems to be, there doesn't seem to be, unlike the other films, I just feel like Stallone didn't seem to have as much kind of power or say on this film. Cause as we've discussed before, there's been other films where he's had like quite a big say in his roles, his lines, kind of what's happening, even to the extent with the specialist that he'd kind of ordered, James Woods scenes to be cut down and stuff like that. And the way he seemed to kind of, lock, the director of, Judge Dredd out of the edit, out of, post-production and stuff like that. So he's had like a large sway in a lot of these picks. But in this one, he seems to have just turned up, got his paycheck, did his acting, and, the creative decisions were really Donner's.
Yeah, maybe because Donner was either a big name or maybe because Stallone hadn't been doing as well, I guess, that they're I'm assuming that's the second one isn't the
I think it's maybe
the real one.
I think it's maybe more to do with Donner and Donner being an experienced veteran director who has a name, and the fact that it's his production company, is one of the production companies behind it. I think it's more that he's just the type of director that can go kind of toe to toe with Stallone, and probably because he is a veteran experienced director with a long track record, probably someday Stallone automatically gives more respect to than a lot of other directors he's worked with in this time period, or any time period really in his career.
Yeah, but I can't believe that. So I know the whole industry since, especially the writer's strike has changed, and wasn't it 08 or 10? I can't, when the writer's strike happened, but they were paid $1 million for the script by Joel Silver.
Yeah,
is a insane amount.
It is a lot of money. But that's the kind of money that was swirling around in the 90s, apparently. That's, cause you hear that with other movies where it seems like a hell of a lot, we talked about before in the Stop or My Mum Will Shoot episode that was picked up, that script was picked up for $500,000 in that time period, right at the start of the 90s. So it's pretty insane. Right. So we've had our tangent. So now we need to get to the plot of the movie. Tell us how this one opens, Craig.
So it opens with kind of these flashes of, we're assuming it's a flashback, mostly of a black and white scene where you see a guy walking out of a building. We won't know officially what the building is yet, but then you kind of see hands, setting up their sniper rifle and getting ready to shoot him and looking at him through the scope. And then the guy eventually looks up towards, the scope, like he knows that he's about to be shot. There's some sort of element there. To then when we jump forward and we see Stallone walking.
Actually, I was just going to mention
through the water.
I was just going to mention before we get into the next scene in the swamp, that, in that scene, like we kind of, the scene, the way the scene is kind of cut is like, a flock of birds like flies up, a kind of across the guy's, face, and then we cut to the swamp scene. And it seems very much, cause like, we kind of talked about in the Glimmerman episode where it came out in 96, that it was kind of, odd kind of, John Woo style flourishes. And this kind of time period seems to be where other Hollywood directors suddenly watch John Woo movies, because like there's a couple of moments later on as well that seem of a kind of John Woo style, and I just thought that was worth.
Yeah, and I mean to even go further than that, I mean there's so many scenes of what's become cliched now with John Woo is like Antonio Banderas with two guns jumping and they're shooting at each other or stuff like that. And it's not to the same extent or execution as John Woo, but there's definitely jumping and shooting with pistols. But it plays kind of these flashes. It plays almost very, either it's trying to be artsy or sentimental in a way. And we don't know officially why, but I don't know, there's just something about it that it doesn't match. Well, I guess we'll get more into that later. It doesn't match tonally with, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that don't match tonally.
Like scene.
Yeah. And, I mean, like we were kind of discussing, like, we had a kind of conversation before we started recording, and, I said in the conversation, even though this movie was made before either movie, it's like this movie wants to be like both Ghost Dog and John Wick at the same time, which is, a very strange mix.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, and it works, I don't know, there's some parts where it works for one, but that kind of seems to be the MO for these Stallone films, or a good portion of them, where it's like, if you just stuck with this version, maybe a good movie would have, come out of it. And Assassins is a little more entertaining, obviously, for me, than something like Specialist or Stopper My Mom Will Shoot or Rocky V. But yeah, it's not tough competition, but, it very much is that element of there is kind of this good movie in there, but you would have to kind of shape it more or have more consistency, I guess, with what you were going to do.
Yeah, for sure. But so what happens next? Okay.
So next we get Stallone walking through the swamp with their guy Stallone's wearing these kind of boots for tall boots, like for walking in that terrain, and the other guy's wearing basically a suit and dress suit shoes, and he ends up losing a shoe at one point, falls into the water and is laughing, but and there's Stallone has the gun near him, so you kind of know that he's taking this guy out to kill him, and the guy starts talking about how he is another assassin, and because Stallone has or I guess I'll start saying his character's name of Wrath, has such a high, again, going back to Specialist, has high morals and a code that, he had to kill some innocents, or he had to do the jobs that Wrath wouldn't do. But he knows that his time has come, because apparently, as we learn throughout this movie, that the only way truly out for an assassin is to have another assassin kill you, I guess. And
apparently so. There's a lot of elements in this movie that are just straight up confusing, but apparently that is a thing. I think like the kind of interesting thing to note as well about, you know, like the differences in the Wachowski sisters kind of script, and obviously the reason that they couldn't get kind of credit removed is because the story is basically the same, but it is the accent on things that are different. So, you know, and this scene apparently is in the original script as well, but the accent on it is different, and apparently just shoots the guy. Like, there's no kind of you know, what happens where he like lets the guy kill himself, you know, that doesn't happen. And also this kind of getting all kind of teary-eyed about like having to execute the guy, that doesn't happen, because in the original version, like, Wrath is very much more of a straight up anti-hero and is equally a cold-blooded killer, but, you know, obviously, you know, does have that kind of his own personal moral code. So you still kind of, presumably, in the, you know, if they had filmed the original script, presumably you would have still rooted for the character, because the other character on the other side is even more terrible, but he's still like a pretty terrible guy. You know, he's just not as terrible as the guy he's going up against. He's not a straight up sociopath who's happy to kill anybody. But yeah, so this whole kind of like, so from this very first moment, the movie is kind of forcing you to be like, oh, well, he's essentially, he might be a professional hitman, but he's a good guy, you know, like where that apparently didn't happen in the originals.
And you can really feel it, not just in the movie, but throughout, where there's the elements that the way the lines are said are like, oh, well, if the line was like, I could see how the line, I guess, taken a different way would give more of that, I guess, appearance of him being, you know, like that. But then, I don't know. It just, in doing, I think that's where the element would have come in more, of it being better or at least the movie I would have been more interested in, or found more entertaining, of seeing, you know, basically a cold-blooded killer instead of, you know, brooding. As we talked about before, everybody, you were mentioning before recording, they talk about Stallone not really showing emotion. Well, in this one, it's like looks like he's mopey the whole time, or brooding, or, you know, there is an emotion there, and it, you know, it kind of becomes a buzzkill.
Yeah, a little bit. Because, like, I think he's trying to play kind of brooding and kind of cold-blooded a little bit, but it often comes off as kind of mopey, or either mopey or kind of bored-looking, you know, like, that's his main, and it kind of, you know, as we'll probably discuss throughout the episode, like, it kind of has that similar problem to the character he was playing in The Specialist, where, like, he's obviously trying to do the kind of broody, kind of middle distance staring thing, and he's just not very good at that specific thing. Yeah.
But I will say the other actor, for, even though the scene, you know, we're talking about how the scene feels a little off and all that, it does, for the scene that they're giving, he does a decent job. I was like, he's acting pretty well. It's just, like, if you just replace Stallone, then you might have, like, a pretty emotional scene going on right now.
Well, one of the interesting things, actually, is, you know, even though he's, of course, very problematic nowadays, but Mel Gibson was originally attached to this movie as both actor and director. And and I think Gibson would be better in this role. And I think it's kind of funny that Gibson was offered this, and like, obviously he decided to turn it down and decided he was more interested in acting and directing in Braveheart, which, you know, who knows what happened to that film. So he probably
just
made
a little movie.
just a little movie, so yeah, he probably made the right decision in the end. But yeah, I think he would have been better in this. I think he would have been better in this role, and because he can definitely do that kind of broody, cold-blooded thing like way better than Stallone can.
And I even, because it was on TV the other night, they were showing all the Lethal Weapon movies, and I guess again, he has his politics and everything, and has said horrible, horrible things. But yeah, I get there more than Stallone. Mel Gibson he did have this charisma that, I mean, made him so watchable, I'd say, as a leading man for people.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic as well that, because this movie is about criminals and an anti-hero, I found it quite funny as well that it was Brian Helgeland who rewrote this to make it more kind of mainstream and sand down the edges of the script and stuff, because obviously just a few years later, only 4 years later, he would have similar problems with his movie Payback, where he made the kind of darker version, and there's like 2 cuts of that movie available. Like the director's cut eventually did come out, but he kind of got knocked off of that, and Gibson kind of sanded down the edges and made it more mainstream in post production, and so it's kind of ironic that kind of happened to Helgeland just a few years later.
Yeah, I haven't seen I'll have to look for it. I haven't seen the director's cut of Payback. But
Yes,
now I will.
Yeah, apparently the director's cut is, it's a bit different. It's a bit nastier. It doesn't have the narration. There's a bunch of differences. But I'm sure we will talk about that on the podcast one day whenever we do a Mel Gibson season. But that is for another time. I did want to mention, we're not got past this fucking swamp scene, but there's one last thing on it. The actor in it, the other actor who is being assassinated is Muse Watson, and he's pretty good, and listeners may recognize him from his role in NCIS as Agent Mike Franks, or they might recognize him as the killer in I Know What You Did Last Summer. I thought you might have picked that one up, but
it's been a long time for all those. But so next up we have, then I want to say we jump pretty much ahead right to him on. Is this one of the many him chatting on the computer?
Yes. So, one of the central problems of the movie in terms of pacing is that, I'm sure we'll mention this a lot about how the kind of parallels between this movie and The Specialist, but just like The Specialist had its problems with pacing largely due to it being phone sex the movie, this movie has similar problems with pacing because it is internet chatting the movie.
Yeah, insane stuff. Okay, so the issue too is that, I don't know, they're trying to show us more personality from it with it. So he's typing one thing, but then he's also saying something else, like he's signing up for all these gigs basically from the contractor, but then he's being like, oh, I'm going to retire, or yeah, you don't want me to do that, or stuff like that. But then he's saying the exact opposite. And again, it feels like one version of that script would make a lot of sense, but in this, it just kind of, maybe because of Stallone's doing it, it just feels awkward.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
With the tone and everything, yeah.
Yeah, because the tone's kind of wry, and I think like it's supposed to be more kind of nihilistic. It's supposed to be more kind of like this is a guy who's just like a shell of a guy who's like really kind of burnt out from like doing this for all these years and is really wants to throw in the towel. Where it just seems kind of like, I don't know, kind of quippy here when with Stallone doing it. And I do feel like a little bit harsh because like we kind of. I've mentioned before that I really do like Stallone and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But it just seems like, recently we've had a kind of run of films where I just feel like he's kind of miscast a little and, that's.
Yeah. I mean, when he's on, and then I would even say, and we've talked about, I think off recording too, of, I'm curious if I was to just watch this, not for the sake of the podcast, but for whatever reason, and not, looking at it because I knew we were going to be going scene by scene or stuff like that. Would I be more okay with certain things or just more forgiving? Which, probably but
yeah, for
I don't know. The '90s so far, the '90s just seemed for Stallone like this period of, I think he was trying to transition, but also not, especially when we get to things like Copland or, you even have Stop or My Mom Will Shoot or Oscar, where it's like he was trying to leave that acting persona, the, Rambo, Rocky persona behind, but then he's also still kind of doing it. I don't know. It's a weird kind of decade for Stallone.
Yeah, and like, I listened to an interview he did for this and some other interviews he did for movies around this time as well. Like, when he was doing his interviews for the likes of The Specialist and for this movie, like, he mentioned in a couple of them that I watched of being like, talking about wanting to keep his hat in like the action genre, but like kind of pivoting away from being like the kind of one man army type character and playing these like slightly more kind of thoughtful characters who, do like a bit of action, but like also like work their mind as well. But obviously, he didn't get the returns he wanted from that. So then he just resurrected all his greatest hits, and it's worked for him, but it is interesting that here he is, in his late 40s coming up for his 50s, like, talking about these things and being like, well, I can't do that kind of stuff anymore because of the age I'm at. And now he's like in his 70s still doing those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
he gets a contract, so that is, and to basically take out, I think it's like a mobster, or I'm not sure, I feel like it was some sort of crime kingpin, and again, the price is too high for him to say no and to officially say he's retired.
Well, I don't know, like, it's not kind of clearly established. This character who's ordered to take out, and again, we kind of lay it on that, like, oh, he's really a good guy. Like, it's not kind of clearly defined if he's a crime lord or not, or if he's just like a kind of fallen politician or something, or like some sort of dodgy businessman, because what is established is there is various newscasters at the brother of his funeral, where this hit is supposed to take place, that this guy is a billionaire and it came out that he was secretly funding right-wing death squads in Central American countries. And that's what's said by the newscasters. And it said it came out in like a committee hearing, which made me think he was like not, like maybe a fallen politician or something, rather than like being like a crime lord. That like, this is been doing things kind of off book and then got uncovered. Yeah. It's not clearly established. But.
Yeah, I'm not. No. No, it's literally just there to make us, to introduce, the other character and to see us, for us to see, Wrath print out the picture of the guy and circle his eyes.
That is true.
Because that's his thing. He wants to see the eye. Yeah.
He's all about the eyes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so we don't really care about this character. You know, he gets killed by the character that we do care about, Bain, played by Antonio Banderas, who, the sneaky bugger, steals Stallone's kill.
Which you're not supposed to do in the Hitman world.
No, again, the incredibly well-defined rules that are made in the rule book of the assassin. So yeah, you know, there's not supposed to be two hitmen assassins, you know, like, working the same contract. That's a big no-no in the assassin world.
But what's interesting, so I like the concept that, Wrath has his gun in a cast to look like he has a broken arm and he's just going to shoot. And then Bain shoots him with a sniper rifle, which he was all dressed up in, like the groundskeeper gear. And what's interesting is that they're both assassins. Stallone / Wrath was going to kill him anyways, but because he's a good assassin, even though he's going to kill the guy, he decides to then chase Bain and get him arrested or to kill him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it never feels like Bain wasn't ever trying to kill him or anything. So yeah, I'm not sure about how far
the plot has to start some way.
Like, well, he's gonna kill you. Yeah.
And then we get more kind of like Wrath's like a good guy because he has the drop on Bain. He can shoot Bain and kill Bain, even though, you know, like you say, his motivation for that may be wobbly, but he doesn't because Bain gets himself arrested and because innocent police officers are obscuring his shot, he moseys on and, you know, gets away from the crime scene.
Yeah, but he makes sure to listen to all the police radios because he knows that it's probably not going to be that easy.
And we get after this, we get Bain in the back of a police car, and we get the first little inklings of the overacting performance that Antonio Banderas is going to give throughout the movie, because he's just sitting in the back of the cab, talking to the police officers, jabbering away in Spanish and just being kind of over the top and ridiculous. And it's fun times.
And he has super strength because he
yes, I noticed this as well.
Rear window. He kicks out the rear window or the driver's side back window with one foot after he gets, you know, does that whole breaks his thumb to get out of the handcuffs, leans out that window, and then with one hand snaps the police, you know, the driver officer's neck, somehow just one-handed. And then,
it's amazing. Like, I was just, I had to pause the movie. I was buckled with laughter because, like, you know, like you say, he punches out the glass with like, you know, like just one foot. And then, but the thing that, you know, the thing that really got me is because, I mean, you hear the crack, you know, like, you hear the crack and you're supposed to assume like, that guy's dead. And you're like, how, he broke that guy's neck with one hand in like just a simple flowing movement of it, like, it's like, no guys, like, who is this guy? Is he Superman? Like, what is going on? But, I mean, there is other scenes in the movie that suggest that Bane might be one of the X-Men or something. But yes, it's particularly funny display of super strength.
And I like how, so the car flips, there's the other surviving officer. He's going to get his gun from the front seat that the officers were talking about prior, and he told him not to touch. And then he yells at the officer who's like trying to grab at him. Just being like, no, don't do it. Basically like scolding a child. And then the officer just stops and he grabs the gun and he shoots the two other officers who then slam into, the car, killing the one that was dangling there. You assume.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and guess that everybody died in that scene. But Wrath is still hot on Bane's tail as he drives away from the crime scene, bumps into a cab deliberately, punches out a cab driver, stealing his cab, and then listens on the police for the police radio to see where kind of Bane will be at to pick him up in the cab.
Yeah, and so then this is probably one of the, I don't know, we were talking about this before recording, but this kind of leads to one of the most good intense scenes, I'd say. I mean, there's a lot of scenes that they try to make intense and all that, but one of the most effective, I guess I'll put, where he's listening on the cabbie radio. He hears that somebody's going to an airport, so he takes his chance of picking them up, and it does happen to be Bane. But Bane does not know what Wrath looks like, so he just gets in, assuming he's getting into a normal cab, and Wrath is trying to chat with Bane, and Bane just wants to sleep and go to the airport, doesn't want to have it, until Bane notices that, wait, he turned left instead of right. The airport was right. Something's going on. And Bane assumes that the cabbie, who's Wrath, is just trying to run up the number, or run up the price on the fare. But that's not it at all. And this is more quippy stuff that, obviously does not then fit later. I don't know. Again, it
doesn't really fit later. But so this section of the movie is really quite fun. And the way Stallone plays Wrath in this section of the movie, I think is really quite fun. I mean, he's quite a quippy character, and they kind of quip back and forth in the cab, and there's some real fun stuff here. I love the bit where Bane shoots the bulletproof glass just to check that it's bulletproof glass.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing, is that that's how Bane suspects, because Wrath starts saying, well, then you can just get out of my cab. I'm not going to I'm not going to deal with a bad customer. But then Bane realizes that the bulletproof glass is there. So if he was to get out of the car, then Wrath could have shot him. Yeah. So they're having that standoff where they're both just pointing the guns at the bulletproof glass. And Bane even wants to talk to him, because we find out that Wrath is kind of his idol, and he shoots the soccer ball. There's a team, they're playing soccer, football, and it's, I'd probably say a high school team or middle school team or something. He shoots the ball in the air, and then he's going to start, picking off these.
He's just going to start killing
girls.
Children. Is what's going to happen.
Yeah. To know he's the bad guy. And so, Stallone starts driving as they're having this conversation about what is going on.
Yeah, and we get a bunch of exposition as well about this Nikolai character who was a rival assassin and stroke friend with Wrath. And we kind of assume that he might be the figure in the flashback, which turns out he is. But so we get some sense of that flashback, which really didn't make any sense at the start of the movie in terms of its placement there. It's a bit weird. But anyway, we're now getting some, a bit more of that picture in our minds.
And we learn about the whole, the very clear assassin's code, an assassin's retirement plan, or something that says if you're the number one, if you're the number two, you have to kill the number one to then become the number one. And
that's how the ranking system
And that's
works.
really the only way that assassin, and that's the only way that an assassin can really retire, is to be killed. And a lot of them are just okay with it. They just know that they'll die and not even be able to spend the money that they make. as assassins.
I like to think that in this universe, like, there is, like, an official body, like one of those, like, boxing bodies or something, like the WBO, WBA, you know, like, there's an official, organization that does have, like, a ranking system, like a top 100 or whatever. And, like, and maybe the top 100, you know, comes out, like, every month and, you know, Assassins Monthly.
Yeah. And that's elements like that is why it fits with, like, the John Wick, you know, part where it has that kind of, you know, obviously John Wick went more into that mythos and whatever, but you can see little traces of it in that.
Yeah, even down to the extent that, like, I mean, you know, you never know, like, John Wick might be borrowing from this movie, but there is, like, I think it's the last one, I think of, like, John Wick 3, there is a character who is a John Wick fanboy, much like Bain is Wrath's fanboy.
Yeah.
So it does seem to exist in this kind of silly action universe, but also at the same time it tries to be this kind of semi-serious crime thriller. It's very strange.
Yeah. And the issue too with it, and I know we'll talk about more, is with this scene, it's supposed to set up that Antonio Banderas is, you know, the hot shot coming up, but that he's almost now an equal match with Wrath, of that, you know, you don't know which one is going to come out on top because, you know, he's just as smart and he knows every one of Wrath's moves and he knows everything. So it sets him up as like this strong villain that then, as we go on later and later, he's not really, and Wrath is always one step ahead of him and, you know,
that is true.
Always kind of better. But it defeats the whole cat and mouse, I guess, purpose.
Yeah, because we're supposed to see these as like two equal powers kind of going up against each other, you know, clashing swords, but like, it's not really. It always does feel like Wrath has his number and he's just the you know, Bane is just the kind of young gun that's still hasn't quite perfected his craft yet. But we do, in the kind of another entertaining bit of this scene, we do see more of Bane's superhumanness, because like he just kicks out another window. He's really good at kicking out windows. We're basically less than half an hour into this movie, and Bane has already kicked out 2 car windows. And then he looks like he's about to jump out, but then he's just kind of hanging outside the car, and Wrath then drives into a bus kind of sideways, squishing him against the bus, which really doesn't do that much to him. Like, he is squished between a car and a bus, but like, you know, no broken ribs, nothing like that. He's fine, and he's also fine when he just jumps out. He just jumps out the moving car and rolls under a truck, and that is also okay. Again, he is apparently Wolverine. Yeah,
because, and it's just not like one time. Wrath keeps slamming him into that bus. It's like,
oh yeah, like a bunch of times.
Mile, and you see the spark flying. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, you know, him having this sniper rifle in his hands, keeping some distance from him being crushed by the bus. Or otherwise, he is just Wolverine. Then after he jumps out of the car, like, we get a bit of a car chase. You know, a kind of continued car chase, because they're being chased by the cops and stuff, and the cops are still chasing Wrath after Bane jumps out, but then Wrath manages to evade capture because he goes back to the, you know, the kind of home lot of the taxi company. So like again, it gets lost in amongst all the other taxis. And in one of the kind of weird things about this movie, where everything kind of feels kind of strangely low stakes, that's just it. You know, as everybody knows, if there is a manhunt out for somebody, if they do not capture him by the end of that day, the manhunt is called off, because basically the police after this point do not exist in this movie.
Yeah. I was trying to think. There's no follow-up scene. Even when they go to Seattle, there's like explosions and gunfire and all of that. There's no other cops ever that I can think of.
Nope, not at all. No other cops really pop up whatsoever. And I mean, Bain really should be. Everybody's seen his face, so he really should be like a wanted man in many states. Probably be on the FBI's most wanted list, I imagine. But no, we just move on, and everybody can do their work. Beaver away quietly and be undisturbed by any law enforcement.
Well, that's what one of those things I was even thinking about. Like, I know the sake of it's an action movie, but there are points in this movie where they're not even being secretive about concealing their guns, and people seem to not even notice. Like, they're just holding
people
guns
do not react to guns in this movie at all. It's very strange. Those kind of typical action movie moments where like somebody pulls out a gun and like there's a crowd of people who go ah, and then like run away. Like nobody does that. Everybody's like, people pull out guns and everybody's like, yeah, sure, okay, I've been in this hotel before, whatever. Nobody reacts to guns in this movie. It's very strange.
Yeah. And so this is another one of those moments where, Wrath, again, instant message or cyber chat, the movie, where the contractor says they don't know what's happening when he's trying to say, hey, there's this guy who took my hit and is dangerous. What's going on? And yet it isn't until near the third act that he just doesn't think the contractor has any that the contractor may be kind of messing with him or maybe double crossing him or anything at all. It's just like,
that's true.
Okay.
Like,
that's what he says.
Yeah, he's strangely trusting, or like being a professional killer and all. He doesn't, like you say, there's no kind of thought there of like, oh, well, maybe he was the one who also offered the contract to Bain as well as me. He does seem to think that, much later on, but at this point he's just like, who is this guy? Can you tell me anything about this guy? Nope, I can't tell you anything about this guy. Well, no more further investigation needed there then.
Yeah. I mean, this guy who knows everything about him, even down to the next chess move of a chess game he was playing with somebody 15 years prior.
Yes, and we get to see that chess game on his computer, the chess game that was happening in 1980, and that kind of confused me as well, because like it just seems like he has programmed this chess game into every computer he's ever owned since 1980.
Yeah, and I mean, chess is going to be, you'd think with all this setup and everything, that chess will then become a big part of the movie going forward.
Yes,
chess metaphor.
I mean, and again, this is where the deviation from the original script happens, because apparently, like, Wrath is like a kind of chess obsessive, and that is much more of a kind of defining characteristic in the original script, whereas it's just like, it's mentioned a couple of times in this kind of opening section, and then we see the chess game, and then it's really doesn't come up after that. It's just, it's just there as this kind of, and in this movie, the way it's presented, it's just kind of a kind of cheap metaphor, and then we move on, and that's it, done.
Yeah, that's it. And then, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's like many things, I guess, being thrown away, and it feels like it could be used, but then once he moves on, then he just ends up going to, isn't he just offered another? Well,
yes, this is contract? When he's offered the contract. After? Yes, he's offered the contract to kill Elektra, and the contractor doesn't know who Elektra is because apparently she is a ghost, and we'll get into that. But and 4 Dutch buyers of this disc that's a very important disc for plot reasons, and that's where that happens, and then we cut to the introduction of Elektra, played by Julianne Moore, and her cat, who is also very important to the plot. And as I mentioned in the Specialist episode, is the same cat that was in the Specialist.
Yeah, sounds a good cat. That's a lot of work.
The cat is a very important character in this movie.
Yeah.
Carol the cat plays a very important role.
And so with this one, it's supposed to, I guess, show the connection potentially, but it kind of, again, falls flat. Of like Julianne Moore has these moments where she goes back and forth as well, which she has these kind of great little moments. Or as we were talking about before recording again, it's like each one, Stallone, Julianne Moore, and Antonio Banderas are each doing an entirely different movie almost. But there's this whole section where she has cameras in each of the apartments within her complex, and it shows her when she hears a couple fighting, she's kind of flipping through and watching them. So it's like she's never really interacted with people is what we're made to expect, and that pops up as an issue later. And she doesn't interact with people. She is very secretive and cautious, but she likes watching these people kind of from afar to get some form of, I guess, human connection. Because when she's watching that woman cry after her boyfriend, I guess, had a bad argument, she touches the TV. Or I know she says, "Oh, poor baby," or something like that.
Yeah. So,
but that's kind of
again. Yeah, this is also a deviation. This is also a deviation from the original script. So I think, I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense in this movie, like you say, because she becomes more of an outgoing character as the movie goes on, and like this initial character that we're introduced to kind of gets disregarded a little bit, and also. So in the original script, she's more, well, first of all, she's a much more sexual character. And it is apparently made very clear that her surveillance that she set up of the neighborhood is for much more kind of kink reasons of, she's a voyeur, she's kind of a bit of a pervert. And, so yes. And I think, and apparently, like, at some point in the movie, there is quite an explicit love scene between Wrath and Elektra, and I think the character is also kind of bisexual as well, and so definitely like a way more sexual character, and also like the way I saw it described about the way she's kind of perving, this kind of voyeuristic element to her character. It makes way more sense why she has surveillance of her neighbors, because the way it's presented in this movie, you're just like, why is she setting up surveillance of everybody in her apartment block? Like this is not explained or clearly defined at all, and it is, is dropped away. So again, I feel like this is something that is a more clearly defined characteristic in the original Wachowski sisters script, from what I've read.
Yeah, and it even goes to the point. Yeah, it goes to the point where we'll get into it at the hotel when she's setting up the whole thing of the disc and the money exchange and all this stuff. There's like she's very methodical about it, but yet then there's points as we kind of mentioned, that as we go farther and farther along, that she's making these very rookie mistakes. So she's like goes back to the scene of the crime during that whole section, or I don't know. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It just feels, again.
Yeah, as we've kind of discussed in other episodes, and as I'm sure we'll discuss in many more episodes, like, she suffers the same fate of a lot of female characters in action movies in the 90s, and in action movies generally, of she's introduced in quite a cool way. She seems initially a pretty cool character, a pretty resourceful character, but becomes way stupider and way more defenseless and way less interesting the more the movie goes on.
Yeah. She ends up just being there to be, either a bait type character, or to put the hero in more peril. By the end, that's what it feels.
Basically, yes. But I do love, and it's a shame because I do like the way the character's introduced here, and I do like the initial hotel scene, and one of the things I find entertaining as well, because I love when things are just a time capsule for the period that they're made in, like her get-up when she goes to the hotel, like that leather jacket she's wearing with the black leather kind of Doc Marten boots and the kind of jean shorts and all that. Like, it is the most 90s, and like the sunglasses he's got on it, it's the most 90s get up you will see. It's so good fun.
Yeah. If you had any kind of doubts that the Wachowski wrote this movie, like, there's some evidence right there.
There is some evidence right there. It is very on point, mid-90s kind of look for these kind of crime action-y films. And,
since she's a hacker.
Yes, and she's a hacker, so she's got to dress in that kind of cool goth tech way, which hackers generally dress in movies, but not in real life.
I agree that I think the hotel scene works fairly well. I know we're going to get into it, that kind of, despite the flaws that we're talking about, that really until her and Stallone meet, it is pretty, like, it's entertaining. It is a fun.
It really
flaws and all.
It really kind of skips along. The action scenes are pretty fun, even with the kind of ridiculous elements we kind of talk about. It's really quite enjoyable. And like, I kind of, thought my memory of this movie was it was quite shit. And, it got a lot of bad reviews. And so I was like, oh, maybe I've misremembered this. Maybe it doesn't deserve the bad reputation. I was like, this is definitely skating to a comfortable kind of 3 stars, maybe even 3.5, this is doing pretty well, but then, yes, after this point, after the kind of, when they meet, so I looked at the time when they met, and it's kind of about 48 minutes into the movie, and after this point, it does get less fun. But we should talk about the kind of the hotel scene, and basically, I suppose it doesn't really matter because these characters kind of come and go. Like, so we get these four Dutch buyers who speak German and sound German but are apparently Dutch, and it's fine. There's the kind of logic points that you've got to skip by in these types of films, and then basically they're just all killed by Bain, 2 seconds later. We don't really care. This is one of the points in the movie, though, it is quite confusing because Bain kills a bunch of people, including the 4 Dutch buyers, and it turns out they're Interpol agents, but then, we learn nothing more about the apparent sting operation, which presumably was there to capture Elektra, but that is just, completely skated by. We don't learn it. I think it gets mentioned one more time about them being Interpol. Something about Interpol was mentioned by Wrath, way later on in the movie. And we're like, was that supposed to be more of a thing? I don't know, because it's very poorly explained.
Yeah, the only mention after is almost so that they can just cover the plot hole. That's the purpose, is Wrath, is she goes, why isn't any of this on the news? Or it has to be, or something about, it has to be on the news. Why isn't it on the news? One of those lines. And he goes, well, it wouldn't if they were CIA or Interpol. And that's it. It's their version of saying, well, we don't want to deal with it in a script, so let's just say that. So you don't have to.
Yeah, but
I mean, the scene, it is fun. It kind of, you're watching him walk. He puts a beeper in one of their pockets so he can kind of find them later. But he's walking down the hall and you see two people making out at a cleaning person. They just shoots. He grabs another one, shoots him. And that's when he finds out that they're Interpol because he just took a chance killing these people. Or he knew, right. I guess.
Oh, well, yes.
But we
don't know if he knew. It's often poorly defined who knows what, when, and why. Like, it's not, we're kind of like, oh, they know that thing. Or, oh, like, that was a thing. Yeah, that happens quite often. But, like, the best part about this scene is really just, like, Antonio Banderas is overacting again, and the way he taunts Wrath about, possibly not killing Elektra, and, how it's different killing a woman. And, he's just having, and also, like, the little fun moment as well, where there is the Dutch buyer, one of the Dutch buyer guys, like, pulls out the pager that kind of, that goes off, and then, Bain comes in with a kind of killing spree, and that guy goes, oh, this isn't mine, and then Bain comes in and kills everybody, and then, like, when he's exiting the room, he takes the pager back and goes, this is mine. It's quite fun.
Yeah. It's great, and and then, after that, we kind of get this quick back and forth where she's trying to run from Wrath. Elektra is trying to get away from Wrath because obviously he must be after her too, but he's just trying to help her, and to the point that she drops her cat in the middle of the street because she has to bring her cat with her to this thing. And he picks it up and then just kind of goes back to her car. And that's how, he eventually finds out where she lives.
That is right. And, usually you're the one giving the kind of logic points. But, again, this movie's logic is hilarious. Because Elektra, as we have established, is a quote-unquote ghost, who, cannot be traced. Although she is very easily traced by everyone in this film. First of all, Bain traces her because she has left pictures of her cat, which she must carry with her all the time, in her hotel room. So that's how Bain gets it. And then Wrath, he, is looking through the car that she has run away from and, escaped him, and, finds a bag, for pet care, and then goes to the pet care shop, to find her address. Now, obviously, in real life, the conversation would go like, oh, creepy man who's asking for this person's address. No, we don't hand out that information. But, because she is a regular customer, we shall phone her to say that her cat has been found safe and well. Thank you, good sir, and good day.
Well, even because, I have pets and stuff like that, and the conversation, if they found, for example, my dog, they'd be like, no, I don't know who this person, because, I don't, it's not like I bring my dog or my cat or whatever it is into the shop with me every time or stuff or I don't know. Especially being a ghost person, I wouldn't even divulge that much information. And I'm not trying to be a ghost,
Yeah, that is true. But apparently left her name and address with the with
the shop owner.
With the shop owner, who can just be like, yeah, she lives over there. And So Bain and Wrath both find her within about 5 minutes and then go to her apartment building.
But Bain goes to the wrong apartment because he's feeling the cars. And he feels the one that's hot, which is parked at, it was 202. So he's like, oh, so this must be the person's, or this must be the contact's apartment. And so he goes to 202, which was the couple that were
the neighbors, Jennifer and Bob,
fighting prior. Yep. And then he, while she's quickly packing up, the television is on because, obviously the script wants her to see that. And so the television is on Bob, who says, like, honey, or something, baby, I'm so sorry. I love you. And Antonio Banderas says, I love you too, and shoots him. So now she knows that he's there.
Banderas is really great in this movie.
Yeah. And then when she tries to run, then Wrath is at the door, and they both get to see how Bain has found that he's being watched through the camera, and is able to pull on the cord and rip out the wall to see which way the cord is going, to kind of figure out what apartment would be watching them, I guess.
Yeah, somehow, yeah, he's very clever in that.
Yeah.
And
then this is where I guess she starts becoming a dumber character, is that he tells her to leave, he'll meet her at the pet shop.
Yeah.
To help keep her alive. She starts to drive away, sees the woman driving to their apartment, and decides to then turn back around to warn her, as basically Bain and Wrath do a flip, while Bain is now in the Elektra's apartment and Wrath is in the Bob's apartment.
So is Bain in Elektra's apartment? Because Bain kills Jennifer. Like, I get confused at this point in the movie. So Bain kills Jennifer. Like, so is he not still in Jennifer and Bob's apartment?
No, so Jennifer runs into the apartment, sees
she sees the camera. She sees the camera, but doesn't see the dead body. So she's an idiot too. But
no, but she knows. Oh, well, that's ripped out of the wall. It must be they were watching me, because a big plot hole. So she runs up to Elektra's apartment. So he thinks
that makes sense.
Yeah. So Bain thinks she's Elektra, and then shoots her.
Yeah.
Thinking
I know. I realized that he thought that she was Elektra. Like, I just found this a little bit confusing in terms of like who's in what apartment, and it kind of cuts back and forth, and but I mean, the rest of it, I get that, he thinks that Jennifer is Elektra for a minute.
Yeah, no, the geography gets kind of weird. I think with the fact that they have them flip for no reason at all, because it seems like Wrath would know that Bain would be coming up there, but he also is trying to, I don't know. It feels purposeless.
Yes.
To try and just add more scenes or something, yeah.
But anyway, that's, we don't care about the plot of this movie, because I'm not sure the plot of this movie really cares about the plot of this movie. But what we care about is the fact that Bain is Wolverine. And so we get more demonstrations of this as Wrath sets off a gas explosion in the kitchen, which takes out the whole second story of this building, and Bain apparently protects himself from this explosion by picking up, basically a coffee table, which seems to protect him from the explosion, but the explosion does push him out the window, explodes him out a window of the second story apartment. And, he is, thrown out this window, and is then, falls, brutally, to the ground, but then just kind of gets up and moves on. And, we see him a little bit later feeling a bit stiff in a bath, but the bath kind of heals him up just fine.
Yeah. That's it. And the coffee table itself it's like one of those folding coffee where the legs fold. It's one of those very flimsy ones, which is funny about that. Nothing about it looks heavy duty that it would protect from, a whole floor being decimated.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, and I think, again, as we kind of discussed a little bit off air, a lot of these sequences, if this was an out and out insane John Wick style movie, a lot of those scenes they wouldn't seem as illogical, because you'd be like, oh, we exist in like a kind of cartoon action universe where, human beings can take way more than actual human beings. Like these are not, these are cartoon characters, but live action cartoon characters. But because at times this movie wants us to believe that it's a kind of grounded, slightly artsy, slightly existential kind of hitman crime thriller, it just feels off these kind of massive exaggerated moments.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then, so after this, we kind of just get a series of where Elektra and Wrath are working together a little bit, or coming to where she's starting to trust him more. Her cat likes him, and she goes to shoot him, but can't. And then
it's supposed to be this kind of big heart to heart where they kind of learn to trust each other, but it does very much just feel like filler of like we're just kind of spinning our wheels at this point.
Yeah, it just kills a lot of time, and then that's all it does.
It really does, yeah.
But then, so they ultimately decide to work together, and he's going to collect the money for the disc, which now they're partners. He collects it, takes the money, and then she picks him up because he jumped, and then it's a bomb inside the money case.
Which he realizes because
after the
it causes static on the radio.
Yeah, and so he throws it blows up. And what's funny about that is it goes back to his kind of blind willingness, is that he even has a kind of chat afterwards with whoever's the contractor on the computer. And it's not like he's upset about it or anything, or saying, oh, I've definitely been double-crossed now because they put a bomb in this case that was supposed to be $2 million. No, he's just kind of like, well, now I want $20 million for it.
Yeah, he's very cool about it all. He's not like, oh, you tried to kill me, you bastard. So it's a very smooth transition.
He just expects that. Yeah. And so the person just says, I'll need a couple days, and that's that. He puts down the Puerto Rico is where he wants the money to be sent, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we discussed just a little minute ago, yes, there is this massive explosion from the suitcase bomb in the middle of Seattle. Nobody bats an eyelid. We just move on. There's no police. Apparently nobody has witnessed it. And it is not on the news. And the reason it's not on the news is because maybe they were CIA or Interpol, as we discussed. And so we skate on. The plot doesn't care about it, so neither do we.
I mean, that must be the police in this world. They want to get out of doing work, so that's what their excuse will be. Oh, somebody's car was stolen. It was probably CIA. Interpol.
Oh yeah, Interpol or something.
We can't do anything about
it. Yeah. We'll just go back to drinking coffee, eating donuts. That's what we do in all the movies, isn't it? I love as well, we'll go back to the thing that we dig about this movie, and it's Antonio Banderas, because as Wrath is making his new arrangements, Bain is also getting some new arrangements. So, previously, because Wrath had the disc, he had been knocked out the kind of contract, even though he had managed to kill all the Dutch buyers, and he thought he had killed Elektra as well. So he's very annoyed about that, and tells the contractor, fuck you. And that's kind of the end of that. But then the contractor gets back to him to kill Wrath. And his reaction to this is just so fun. It's the way he kind of bites his knuckle. There's a lot of sexual tension in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of homoerotic sexual tension, and that Antonio Banderas really leans into, and it's real fun to watch.
Yeah. And I realized, so it's been a while since I've seen that, and I watched that. I think that scene has become a meme or a GIF or something, because wait, I've seen that a bunch recently. Realized that, him in the bathtub and doing that knuckle bite. It's a gift. It's become a popular gift. If anything from this movie has lived on, it's that scene.
It's Antonio Banderas biting his knuckle in a very sexual way.
And he makes sure to ask please, or that they have to say please, and then I don't know. It feels weird because like the movie wastes a lot of time on filler, but then it like jumps rapid fire ahead again, so that we don't really feel the cat and mouse with Antonio Banderas. It's just kind of like he's just there for there's a large portion of the movie. It's like, oh yeah, he popped up and he's there, kind of. They're both there at the same time, doing their thing. And then, I don't know. It's a hard thing to talk about because what they're trying to sell us isn't what is being, I guess they're providing.
Yeah, for sure, because it is supposed to be the kind of clash of these two titans together, and you feel like, I don't know, like in some ways the kind of Elektra character kind of gets in the way of that, and then there's these kind of, particularly like that kind of the segment of the film we just had. It does feel very much like kind of padding and filler, and kind of Bain's kind of off screen for this little while. And, so we don't really kind of ratchet up the kind of tension of like the escalating game between them, because we have this kind of section that kind of deflates that, and kind of, Bain kind of becomes a side character for a little while, kind of, residing off screen. But then we rush into the final confrontation, which takes forever. So we both kind of noted the kind of timings of this film. So basically they make the arrangements for the drop of the 20 million that they're now going to get paid. Bain gets his new orders to kill Wrath in Puerto Rico, which is where we're heading for the finale of the movie. And it feels like, this is coming up to a kind of climax, the movie's got maybe like 20 minutes left. So I noted, when Elektra and Wrath, rock up in that cab to the dilapidated hotel that they check out. Still 48 minutes left in the film, which too much to my surprise. And, so this is where the film takes a kind of real nosedive, because...
and it's 48 minutes left, minus credits. And,
so the credits are 6 minutes, so 42 minutes.
Yeah. And you would think that, if there's that amount of time left, then that must mean it's going to go on some other direction or whatever. And not a lot actually happens in that 42 minutes. It's just, it takes that long for the couple of scenes that they do have. There's a lot of jumping back and forth. There's a lot of trying to build this tension that doesn't build in the way they're trying to. And I guess for us to talk about it, I realized it'd be quick. My notes on it aren't even that much. It's just kind of like, they go there, they do this, they do this, they do this, and then we're done, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. There's not a lot happens in that. I mean, if you compare it to like the opening half hour or whatever, where like a bunch of stuff happens, like, we talked a bunch about that, and we probably could have talked even more about like the kind of opening of the movie. And I would say the first act of this movie is really quite fun, but it's just, I mean, this is a real drag. And, so we get to the old dilapidated hotel. Wrath gives an apparently dramatic monologue to explain why Bain will come to this hotel window to shoot him, because he came to this hotel window to shoot Nikolai, and we get the full explanation of the flashback that we've been seeing throughout the movie of like, he killed Nikolai from this window, and because Bain is such a fanboy and such a lover of assassin history, that he will do the exact same thing, and which is exactly what happens, because apparently Wrath has a psychic connection with Bane due to their homoerotic man love, and I don't know, So there's that, and then we have more instances of Elektra becoming a dumber, less interesting character, as Wrath is like, first of all, like, they are hiding from a trained assassin, and Elektra orders room service, which seems insane, but then, like, the guy, the kind of bellboy guy who's given the room service gives a brief explanation of the Day of the Dead because there is a parade happening outside the window, and, like, Elektra again is like, oh, why don't we go out and enjoy the parade? You're hiding from a trained killer. Like, it's not you've not gone to San Juan for a holiday with your new boyfriend. Which is how Elektra is treating this.
Yeah. And she goes there. That's the hard thing too. That's why I don't know if the scene was the same or is supposed to be different, because she goes there, it gets into the cemetery where they're putting all the stuff and everything that comes with Day of the Dead. And she sees Bane, who, again, he's buying some fruit. He gives a very generous tip to the women he buys the fruit from. And
he also pretends not to be able to speak Spanish, and it's like a really weird scene, but like he's just kind of having like an entertaining moment to himself of like, oh, you don't speak English? Oh, that's a real shame. You know what? I've killed a lot of people. I've filled a lot of graves just like this, and he's just talking away, and then in English, and they don't understand anything, and then he's like, he's just kind of like, just kidding, I spoke Spanish all along. I am Spanish. That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's a real weird scene.
Yeah. And then he smells the jasmine, which I guess earlier when he's in her apartment, he smells her perfume. So he smells the jasmine again. And this is where, like, it seems like it's building tension to something. Even if he thinks Elektra's dead, him potentially meeting her, he's looking around, she's kind of hiding. Then Wrath grabs her, is holding her to not, make a noise, and they look, and he just finds like jasmine flower, or, jasmine in itself. He goes, oh, jasmine. It gets all over this place. And that's the end of it. Like, it does, like, this whole kind of build up of whatever it's trying to do just feels like a big letdown. Like, oh, okay. So this was not, there was no point of this scene at all. That just took up like 5 minutes or something of runtime.
Yep, again, just a total filler scene. Like, and it just, any tension that was supposed to be there was just immediately killed. And that's, and we move on. We do get some more fun overacting though, because like Bane goes back to his hotel, where he is practicing his shooting, because he has placed an apricot on top of the spike of a metal fence, and like a metal gate, I should say. And then he shoots it with a sniper rifle, and he then starts talking to the apricot that he is eating, and says, "I just killed one of your brothers," which is a very fun line. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, for the sake of him, that is kind of really the only reason why this treads above any little bit of water, which it barely doesn't. But, just watching him throughout these oncoming scenes, or even when he's sweaty and which we'll get into with the sniper rifle, and he's getting frustrated. That is the only reason why I think I stayed invested, or at least kept watching it.
Yes.
Because anything between Stallone and Julianne Moore, as much as I think Julianne Moore is a very talented actress, it just falls so flat, like flatter than flat.
Oh, it really does. And like, they try to kind of build up the kind of romantic tension with them, and let's be honest, there is way more romantic tension between Bane and Wrath than there is Elektra and Wrath.
Yeah. I mean, there's more romantic tension between Wrath and the cat.
that is true. It's a great performance by Pearl the cat. So well done to that cat. Yeah, for sure. And like you say, I mean, Julianne Moore, literally one of my favorite actresses, but like she is not well served by this movie.
No, by the next day, he knows that again. So. And that goes against what we've been talking about so much, is that Bain is supposed to be an equal match, but he just falls right into like the trap so easily. And there's no thought in his mind, if he knew all of this history, that, that I guess Wrath wouldn't kind of be using that against, I don't know. Anyways, so that flaw too, kind of skipping all that because it's a major one, but yeah, it ends up going into where, so he knows that Bain won't shoot him until he's walking out of the building because he wants to see his eyes. So he goes in, asks to get the money, the transfer, asks to close out his account and get all of the money. It's going to take basically all day to count it because there's $50 million. And the whole purpose of this, I guess, this whole thing is that, we'll wait him out. And since he's up there, the sun is going to be out. It's going to be beating down. He's going to get flustered. He's going to get frustrated, and that's why he's going to mess up. But then on top of all that, like at no point does he really ever care that the contractor already tried to kill him and double cross him. Like that's still not a thing. He doesn't even care about the contractor double crossing him. I don't know.
He's not that mad about it. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in terms of like the logic of this film. I mean, certainly, these two guys, much like James Bond is a great action hero but a terrible secret agent, these guys, due to Wrath's magic psychic abilities and also just being really good at shooting things, and Bane's magic Wolverine abilities and equally being good at shooting things and getting out of things by doing action-y things, are good, action hero villains, but, are, again, just terrible at their supposed occupation of like, if they are supposed to be like silent, stealthy killers, they're the worst. Every job they do is so noisy, so full of, innocent bystander casualties and like just, so reckless that they would be caught immediately. And also they are both also terrible snipers because they have picked a window that can be clearly seen and they can be seen in full sight. Like, they're terrible at this, this supposed occupation that they have.
Yeah. Julianne Moore is just outside of the coffee shop, which obviously if he would happen to meet Julianne Moore, there's a whole scripting issue that could have worked better, where if he met her during the festival, not knowing that she was Elektra, then he could have seen her later. But like, oh, wait, I saw her earlier or whatever. You could have done a lot more of that, but he doesn't. He doesn't notice her throughout that whole time where he's up in the sniper kind of window and she's just watching him and talking to Wrath through a two-way radio. And they're just talking back and forth. It's supposed to, I guess, give more kind of connection between the two of them. She tells this joke they laughs at. It's a horrible joke.
It's not really a joke. It's kind of like just like a weird parable. It's just just a weird moral fable is what it is. Not really a joke at all. He says tell a joke and then she just tells this weird story with, a vague moral to it. And it's, about,
and then he laughs so
trusting
hard,
people who look like saviors.
So you don't trust people that might hurt you, might actually be your friends. The people that might try and be your friends are the ones that might hurt you. But the moral of the story is, if the things are going well, keep your big mouth shut or something. And then he spits out his coffee. He thinks it's so funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
What then?
So also, in terms of the logic of this movie, like, you know, like, there is a point where Elektra says, like, apparently she tells him more jokes and stories after this point. And so, you know, time kind of goes by and we're kind of cutting between the three characters as we see the hours kind of tick by. And, then Elektra says, like, oh, I think I'm out of stories. And you're just sitting there watching it going, like, how many hours has Elektra been telling stories, like, continuously? And, like, why is the, you know, like, cafe that she's been sitting at, like, apparently all day, is, you know, like, they're not kind of weirded out by the fact that she's been sitting just drink, and, like, how much coffee has she drunk as well, like, in these, like, 8 hours? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
There's so many questions that you end up coming away with.
There's too many. I mean, the whole point, again, this is when you kind of get the only saving grace is you see Antonio Banderas staring intently, trying not to, you know, lose sight of potentially, you know, Wrath walking out of the building. And so anytime he sees somebody, he jerks up to look through the sniper rifle, but he's sweating more. He's already wasted all of his water. He tries to use the water bottle to pee into at one point, even though it's a dilapidated hotel building. He could just pee wherever.
He could just pee on the floor or whatever. You know, it really doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, this is completely dilapidated. It's you know, it's on the point of collapse. You know, it's probably going to get bulldozed, not as long after this, but like he needs to pee in the bottle. Like, the fun thing about him peeing in the bottle, again, this probably gives his position away to anybody who's like, you know, looks up, but he just flings his pee out of the bottle out the window, and he's just kind of like, I'm so mad, I'm just going to spray my pee about.
But it finally goes to the point that, and then this is a confusing bit as well, that he falls into the trap fully, that he gets frustrated and decides to walk into the bank, which Stallone or Wrath says to Elektra that he did the same with Nikolai. So I get, which was confusing, suggesting that, so you went in and gave away your position to Nikolai, and Nikolai still just walked out. So then Antonio Banderas, or Bain, is just, you gave away your position, and then you're just expecting, but he'll still just walk out the building. Which, again, I don't know, goes with the plot.
Yeah, no, because, like, again, you're sitting there watching it thinking, like, this building doesn't have a back door, like, there was no other... Did he not look for another exit? Like, what's going on exactly? Like, it is confusing because you're like, well, why did he just walk out to be... I mean, I suppose, like, it might be semi-explained by, you know, what comes up a little later on in the movie, but, it's just very strange. I know, like, it doesn't make any sense because, like, you know, all you've seen in the flashback is Stallone kill, you know, like, once we eventually see the whole flashback, is like, well, Stallone has killed Nikolai and he just walked out the bank. But now we're being told that Stallone, like, met him in the bank and then ran back to his position, but Nikolai just kind of marched out to his own death because obviously kind of doffing his cap of, like, you know, for the ranking system of, like, you know, like, oh, well, you know, you've beat me, you're the number one now, I will, you know, go out honorably by just coming out the front door and being executed by you. That's apparently a thing. But anyway, in this scenario, Elektra runs up to try and steal Bain's sniper rifle, but Bain has been smart and kind of hid the sniper rifle kind of up in the rafters of his room, in the ceiling, the kind of exposed ceiling, and Elektra, being the idiot character she is now, not the kind of cool badass, hacker character she was in that opening kind of hotel scene. No, that character is long gone. She is now just bumbling idiot who just is there to get Wrath in more danger. She A, cannot get the gun, and B, falls through the floor. Yeah.
Yeah. And then stays there for a long time, unable to get up, but is finally, when he comes back, is able to hide under some garbage and things like that, and he doesn't notice her again because they're all horrible assassins. And
nobody has any peripheral vision. Just like nobody in this movie has any peripheral vision. So. Yeah.
Doesn't notice the giant hole in the floor, all that stuff.
No, nothing like that. But he does have a great sense of smell, as we'll find out very, very, very soon.
Yeah. So Wrath comes out, he sees him, he still provides an opportunity where Bane could just shoot him. So it's not like he's really thought this through fully. He's standing there in the open, talking on his earpiece, and trying to get a hold of her, which her two-way radio got busted or something. And then...
Yeah, I mean, that is also confusing in terms of logic, because he kind of obviously doesn't know if she's there or not, or if she's lost the connection, or what the fuck. And he's kind of being like, Elektra, are you there? Elektra, are you there? And while he's doing that, he just goes out the door, as if, he's kind of forgotten that a guy's going to snipe him in 2 seconds.
Yeah. And then, Bane gets a ton of moments to get clear shots, but I guess because of that whole eye thing, he wants, even though he sees his eyes too at another point, but I guess he wants it to be a perfect, where they're looking exactly at each other's eyes, I guess. And then, he finally gets the opportunity, but Wrath takes out his earpiece. He kind of notices that, and then he realizes he smells jasmine, which Elektra shoots him. Again, I guess the Wolverine element is going to be coming up very much so soon. She shoots him in the back. He starts kind of randomly shooting and falling around, and then Wrath comes in, joins her, sets all of his money down on the ground. And then they get into more shootouts where Bane is shot again and then falls through 2 floors, hits onto a railing kind of ledge area. That breaks off and he falls further onto the ground.
And we at this point, we're like, well, he's dead now. And at this point it does feel quite anticlimactic, because it was like, oh, well, he was killed quite easily, because Wrath runs into the hotel, and 2 seconds later Bane is quote unquote dead, and you're just like, oh well, it's been this whole kind of dramatic build up, and we've just had this kind of mano a mano conversation in the bank that seems like almost like this movie's type of Heat moment, and then it's just like, oh, and it's just, oh, that's it done, and then you're like, oh, well, the movie's, that's the end of the movie, right? Because there's nothing else. I mean, the movie doesn't seem to care about the contractor, so why should we, but, oh, maybe the movie does care about the contractor.
Yes, because the contractor was Nikolai, and it's always been Nikolai, just been kind of messing with. He knew the Cold War was ending, so he even put the hit out on himself, knowing that Wrath would always aim for the heart. And then, I guess because plot and because wanting to make a twist, that's what they decided. And that, for these 15 years, he's been the contractor.
Yeah, but everybody in this movie, apart from Elektra, who obviously doesn't have any superpowers, but because unfortunately female characters in action movies are treated badly. But so everybody in this movie has superpowers, because we have established that this hit where Nikolai was taken out by Wrath, or Wrath, who apparently always killed in the exact same style, which again kind of makes him a bit of a rubbish hitman, but we shouldn't delve too much into that logic of, so Nikolai had like a thing, like a kind of like a bulletproof vest or something to protect his heart, so he didn't die. But the line that really gets me is he knew the Cold War was ending. And apparently this hit took place in 1980, 9 years before the Berlin Wall fell. I mean, that's, again, Nikolai has similar psychic abilities to Wrath does, apparently.
Yeah. At one of the, the heights of the Cold War, he knew it was going to end.
Yes. In the year that the US boycotted the Moscow Olympics, he knew that the Cold War was coming to its natural conclusion.
Yeah.
It makes perfect
and so
mind-blowing.
But then again, it has this whole exchange where like, well, you betrayed me because you made the hit on yourself, so I'm upset with you. And then him going, well, you betrayed me because you took the hit and were willing to kill me. And they're just kind of having this back and forth conversation that seems purposeless. Like, we don't care at all. It's not like, even though it's talked about this whole Nikolai hit and it showed us the flashbacks and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know, just watching it, it still didn't care. I was like, oh, well, you guys are talking? What is going on right now?
Yeah. I mean,
and that's
Nikolai set up his own hit, and he's pissed at Wrath for taking that hit, and Wrath's pissed at him for making him think he was dead. It doesn't add up to anything. And then it becomes even more pointless because Nikolai is killed, because Bain, who is very much not dead, apparently, he starts shooting at Nikolai, and Nikolai is dead 2 seconds later. So then we've got Wrath and Bain both shooting up Nikolai, and so the whole twist seems even more pointless because we kill the character off just literally a minute after his monologue. Not even 2 seconds after his monologue where he's all pissy at Wrath, he's dead.
Yeah, and that whole. Oh, we also get the whole, the very important disc. What's on the disc is that it's just some information that would bring down. It's all the names, I guess, of the assassins, or something that would bring down.
Yes, it is. It's the top 100. The top 100 from Assassin Monthly is what's on that disc.
Yeah, and that's what. So they just shoot him. Because, I don't know, and that's where it feels like it goes in a different way. You're like, oh, is this going to be some now, weird Tango and Cash thing, or something else where it's they're kind of buddy, are they just kind of, I don't know, go their separate ways, do the separate things, they're not. Yeah,
it does kind of set up that they're now kind of they can now bury the hatchet, they're now kind of frenemies. But that only lasts for 2. And it's amazing as well, because Bain is, it's amazing that Bain is still alive, but then he is initially kind of crawling around as if he is near the point of death, but then, 2 seconds later, he's back up on his feet, and it's he's got some cuts on his face and stuff like that. He's got a bit of a black eye, but it looks like he's alright. He looks like he's going to be okay.
Yeah. For a guy that's been shot twice and fallen through. Yeah. But he even needs help from Wrath to pick him up. That's how broken, initially what we're made to think, that's how busted up he is that he can't get up on his own. And then he basically says, I'm okay being number one if you're retiring, or that would make me number one. So that's okay. He's like, well, I wouldn't be a real number one. And so we get Julianne Moore saying, well, can't you guys just kiss and make up, knowing it's not going to happen. She puts on her sunglasses to show the reflection for Wrath, so he'll know where to shoot since he's facing away from Bane.
Yeah, and he And again, it's kind of confusing because like Bain has like an injury on his back, so like it's kind of confusingly edited because it looks like one shot goes into his back, even though that's impossible because the shots would go into his chest because like it's shooting from, and it's you're not, I had to watch the scene twice. I had to rewind and watch the scene twice because I was like, I didn't understand it. And then I realized that what happened was, I think it's just an injury on his back, and I think the shots do go into his chest, and that Wrath like shoots through the back of his own jacket to shoot him twice in the chest. But I found it confusing to watch, so I had to watch it again before I kind of, like, maybe that's just me being silly, but yeah.
No, I mean, and even afterwards, I was like, oh, so that's what finally kills him. Like, well, maybe he could come, if Stallone is doing all these, revisiting all these movies, he could do Assassins too, and easily just bring Antonio Banderas back.
Yeah, Bain very much survived it. It's just like, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. And then that's it. And then the movie ends on a kind of weird note of ADR where Wrath and Elektra reveal their real names to each other. His real name is Joseph, and her real name is Anna. And
then she makes the comment about getting a husband for Pearl with all the money, which he walks away. They're both walking away from the money. This big bag of like $50 million, which she then remembers.
$20 million.
Like, oh yeah.
You've added inflation there. It's $20 million.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the suitcase full of money. They're both walking out of the hotel away from. Yeah. Neither of them have bothered to pick it up. And it's weird that they kind of, I don't know. It feels like they could have just had that scene where they said that to each other instead of like we kind of pan out. And then, it's obviously kind of looped in post, like the additional dialogue. So it's kind of weird note to end on. But anyway, that's how we end the movie. And that is Assassins. And in keeping with trends of movies we've talked about in recent weeks, this movie also has a great end credit song. It is the Rolling Stones cover version of the Bob Dylan song, Like a Rolling Stone. And, so we continue the train of, entertaining end credit songs that started with, Demolition Man, that had Demolition Man by Sting, and continued with, Turn the Beat Around by Gloria Estefan on The Specialist, and last week's The Dread song by The Cure. We're keeping good on that. Let's see if that continues to the end of the season.
The Daylight. We'll see.
I don't know. I don't know if Daylight has an interesting soundtrack. I mean, Dread had a great soundtrack. This doesn't have an amazing soundtrack, but it does have some interesting numbers because, in that earlier sequence where Bain kills off Elektra's neighbors, there's a song by Portishead playing, which I was like, I did not expect Portishead to be on the soundtrack of this movie.
Yeah, they have to connect with all those young people. Well, and it takes place in Seattle, so with grunge and
Okay. Yeah,
whatever, I guess.
Again, it doesn't really explain Portishead because, no. British trip hop group, it's still not really explained. But then again, this movie doesn't like explaining things, so, it's fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, that's us. That's another one in the bag. That's just our thoughts on Assassins. Please do write in with your thoughts. Tell us if you like the movie, if you share similar thoughts about the logical flaws of this movie that we do, or, whatever else you want to tell us about the show. Please do. You can rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. There's a bunch of other platforms that you can listen to us on. But anyway, that is pretty much it from us. Craig, before we head on out, tell the people where they can find you on the interwebs and anything else you want to say to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's been always a pleasure being a part of this. And then, if you just search my name, I think it's on Twitter or Instagram at Craig, Craig, Dram, Draheim. Doesn't sound like how it's spelled, but, that's where you can find me. And besides that, with Bloodhound Picks, we release the first and third Tuesday of each month, where we focus on kind of obscure and purely independent films, normally horror, or any sort of kind of dark sci-fi, dark thriller element. And then every once in a while we'll have interviews, stuff like that. But that's the other one I do besides this. And that's all I got.
And yep, that's all from me as well. If you want to hit me up personally, you can on Twitter at ScottMurphy85. If you want to hit the show up, you can also on Twitter at 90s_all. And if you are also interested in horror, you can check out my own show, New Horror Express, that has weekly interviews as well as a monthly look at 21st century's guilty pleasure horror movies. And that comes out the first Thursday of every month, and the interview show comes out every Monday. But anyway, that is all for now. Be sure to join us next time when we will be talking about 1996 disaster flick Daylight. But until then, see ya!